With its M1 chip, Apple has modified a few Macs. With much fanfare, Apple has launched its latest M1-powered Macs and MacBooks. The M1 chip has improved performance and efficiency within the new MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, and Mac Mini, making a departure from Intel as Apple is making the silicon in its computers. This helps the company optimize the entire Mac rather than rely on a third party to match its vision on how the platform should be. So, should you buy the new M1 Mac or stick with the remaining Apple Store Intel-powered Macs? Let's take a look at the pros and cons of the new venture by Apple. So welcome to New Tech. Today we have some awesome updates about technologies, but make sure you're subscribed to our channel for more videos like this in the future. And don't forget to click that bell icon to be the first to know when our new videos go up. Let's begin with the MacBook Pro M1 chip's pros and cons. The M1 chip appears to be faster than Intel. Apple created the M1 device on a chip, SoC, to have the memory included on the board. It calls the Unified Memory Architecture, which speeds up data transfer and adds to performance's overall speed. macOS Big Sur was also designed with M1 in mind from the ground up, so software optimization undoubtedly plays its role. That's not to say that the Intel MacBook Pros still on sale are sluggish. Quite to the contrary, the $1,299 or dollars M1 MacBook Pro is already knocking at the door of its $1,799 or dollar Intel-powered stablemates from what it can say so far. The future that Apple has in mind is M1. You can be assured that Intel MacBooks will still be sponsored for a while, but the fact is that Apple doesn't seem to have them going forward in its plans. The company has already announced that it plans to migrate all of Mac lineups to its chips by 2022, which means that most new features implemented in subsequent macOS versions of the M1 only or function best on that platform. It's worth asking yourself how long you normally take between updating your Mac with this in mind. If it's every 2 years, then it might still be a fair investment for the Intel edition, but if it's 4 or 5 years, it's difficult to say how consistent they're going to be with Mac OS updates. Security is tighter. Having learned that the M1 Mac's already being the objective of malware, and particularly in the light of the Silver Sparrow case, you might be worried. There are, however, several ways in which M1 Macs are safer than Intel Macs. In a security guide, Apple has introduced the latest security features of the M1 Macs. It runs through these more stable than Intel Macs in M1, Apple Security Guide contrasting M1 and Intel Mac security features. The M1 cost. It's obvious that Apple could replace some Intel Macs with its processors, but it's shocking when the MacBook Air M1, 13-inch MacBook Pro M1, and Mac Mini M1 arrived without a price increase. The Mac Mini saw £100 or $100 knocked off the price. This means that you don't have to pay any extra because if you purchase the Intel models they replaced, you'll have the new devices. You can always buy an Intel MacBook Pro as it is pointed out, but if you want the same specs as the previous version with the bonus of durability and future-proof nature of the M1, then you don't have to spend over the odds to get it. M1 devices and upgrade capabilities. It's always advisable when buying a Mac to get the most RAM and onboard storage you believe you will need for the product's lifetime, as most are impossible or very difficult to upgrade. While Apple makes it possible for the new M1 machines to create two-order options, the 13-inch MacBook Pros in particular have very different maximum specs. The M1 edition comes as the baseline, with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage, and these can be upgraded to 16GB and 2TB respectively, but for some huge amounts. On the other hand, the Intel version comes with 6GB of RAM and 512GB of memory, which can be maximized to 32GB and 4TB. The RAM in the Intel MacBooks can also be upgraded after you've bought them, but it's not for the weak-hearted. There are now concerns that the M1 machines do not need Intel machines' additional space due to the aforementioned United Memory Architecture. Time alone can say, but since there's no way to update the M1 Mac RAM, it may be too late by then. Read our MacBook Pro M1 versus MacBook Pro Intel analysis to see how the two 13 MacBook Pro models square up. A comparison of the M1 versus Intel MacBook Air and the Intel versus M1 Mac Mini models is also available. M1 and E GPUs or multiple external displays. If you're using your Mac's external GPU, either for gaming or technical graphics related work, then you'll be sad to learn that the M1 powered Macs won't work. The same is true for multiple external monitors, as only a single external monitor can support the new chip. Apple is adamant that the built-in 8-core GPU would prove much more efficient in the case of the former than the Intel integrated graphics it replaces, but that was never, in the first place, exactly a world beater. As for the restriction of multiple external screens, it has no idea why this happens. It may be a limitation on the hardware side of things, but the Intel computer may prove a better choice if you like to play at the highest resolutions and with multiple screens. However, to connect 2 or more external displays to an M1 MacBook, there is a program workaround. However, it would help if you remembered that MacBook Pro with eGPU attached had defeated the M1 MacBook, so it's a simple disadvantage. M1 Windows and other apps at the moment. Changing the platform means that it would be important to change existing applications to run on the new hardware. For all of its applications, Apple has already done this, but it will take time for other businesses to catch up. On the M1 computers, there is the Rosetta 2 program that translates app code on the fly, allowing non-optimized apps to be used, but you can be pretty sure that this is not a seamless experience. The other big problem some individuals may have is that there is no way to run Windows 10 on the M1 Macs at writing. Boot Camp has been withdrawn, and common emulsion software titles such as Parallels and VMware are not ready yet, and are waiting for Windows to be ready for the ARM update. So if you're using your new Mac with Windows 10, you may want to stay put. It's expected that these issues will be worked out in time, but if you rely on software like Windows 10 or older, small apps that may not make the transition move to the M1 machines now could bring some nasty surprises. M1 and future. Usually any new product has teething problems, and this can be magnified when said innovation is the component that controls almost all computer operations. The M1 looks like an excellent piece of Apple's technical design, but with so few M1 Macs in the general public's hands, it's too early to know if any serious issues are coming to light. For instance, M1 Mac users report extreme SSD activity that could shorten the Mac's lives. So these were our MacBook Pro M1 chip specs you must know. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you can join the new tech squad and be a part of our channel. Thanks for watching!